Welcome to the Inked Film Podcast, where we read the book.
And then see the movie.
I'm Luke.
And I'm James.
And this week, with the help of special guest host Remy Nakamura, we discuss Alex Garland's 2018 sci-fi film, Annihilation. Now let's form an expedition and head into the shimmer. I'd like to welcome our special guest host, Remy Nakamura. He is a writer of weird, dark, and Lovecraftian fiction. His stories have appeared in Escape Pod, Pseudopod, and a variety of anthologies, including Ride the Starwind Cthulhu, Space Opera and the Cosmic Weird, and Swords vs. Cthulhu, Swift-Bladed Action in the Horrific World of H.P. Lovecraft. He is also a graduate of the Clarion West Workshop and a friend. Welcome to the show, Remy.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about Annihilation. Remy and I saw it together, actually.
Yeah, that was a pretty good experience.
So, I mean, how was the theater? Because you guys went basically the first day, right? You went Saturday? Friday?
I think, Saturday, so the second day, I guess.
Cool. How was that? How was the theater going experience?
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, I thought this first time going to this particular theater, it was a pretty packed show, I would say. It was pretty full.
It's something you want to see on the big screen too.
Yeah,
a lot of just amazing, strange visuals, and I'd hate to experience that, on a cell phone or.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think we definitely have a lot to say about that, as far as how people will experience this film. I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna start off by talking about the filmmaker a little bit, move into our non-spoiler, and then kind of talk about our general thoughts. And then we'll move into spoilers. So we're gonna kind of section it out so that you, as the audience member, can kind of know where to stop if you don't want any spoilers.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds good to me.
So to start us off, Alex Garland directed this film. He is an English novelist, screenwriter, film producer, and director. He rose to prominence as a novelist in the late 1990s with his novel *The Beach*, and he received praise.
Let me stop you there. Is that the movie that got made with Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yeah, Danny Boyle directed *The Beach*.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, go on.
So yeah, he wrote a. It's funny because he's now on the other side. He's a filmmaker now. So it kind of meshes well with our podcast here. He has received praise also for his screenplays because he moved away from writing novels into screenplays. He wrote 28 Days Later, Sunshine, Let Me Go, and Dread. So.
Okay, yeah.
He's written some pretty big stuff. And then in 2015, he made his directorial debut with Ex Machina, and it was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. So he kind of made the move over and got a pretty prestigious honor with his first film.
Did you see that one, Remy?
I didn't see that one.
I think you would probably enjoy it, honestly.
Yeah, after seeing Annihilation, I'm eager to see more of his work.
It's funny because this film Annihilation kind of goes along with his film Ex Machina as like a companion piece, because without spoiling anything for you having not seen it, it's kind of man versus technology, and this is man versus nature, and it's like it's really interesting to see the parallels and kind of the things that are opposite as well. As far as non-spoiler goes, I just wanted to get your guys' opinion of what you thought of this movie. I know you said it was visually stunning, but what did you think of the film in comparison to the book, and just overall thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to say, if it's man versus nature, this is some really weird, tripping, on drugs kind of nature.
That's definitely true.
I agree with that. This movie kind of reminds me of like the prog metal of movies. Which, I mean, like if you're a fan of like a Dream Theater or Gojira or one of these like kind of obscure, highly technical, odd bands that have like a really devoted fan base, but just aren't for everyone. I feel like this movie's like that. Like if it's for you, you're gonna love it. But there are, like, even in our theater, like, I could tell there were people who were just like, didn't know what to make of it, were weirded out, and maybe weren't even happy. So it's going to be a mixed bag, I think, for the general public, but I loved this movie.
Yeah, I want to go along with that. I think it's one of those ones where you want to kind of put your hands in you want to put yourself in the director's hands and kind of trust them and go along for the ride, set aside some of your expectations for it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. This is, I mean, like, just to get my thoughts on it real quick, I thought it was stunning. Like, I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was thought-provoking. I thought it played with time and perception and reality and incredible production design. The blocking, the framing, it was a well-crafted film. And like you were saying, I don't think it is necessarily for everyone. I think the first 2/3 of this movie might be for most people, but the third act makes it kind of for like sci-fi fans. Like, if you're a sci-fi fan, you're going to love this film all in all. And I think most general audiences will like the first 2/3 well enough. And then the third act gets a little crazy.
Not just a casual sci-fi fan. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because if you like Guardians of the Galaxy, you're like, yeah, I'm a sci-fi fan.
Yeah.
Like, that's not that kind of sci-fi.
Right. This is 2001, A Space Odyssey sci-fi. Like, this is like some heady, cerebral stuff.
Right. I feel like it's kind of a mashup of 2001 and then the first two Aliens.
Yes.
Yeah.
I definitely got that vibe.
Where it has like the... And I like I found myself making some comparisons to Apocalypse Now. Like, this is Heart of Darkness, right? You're sending your troops. And the other thing that I really dug about this was that you've got this all-female patrol that you're sending in there, and every one of them is badass.
Oh yeah,
for sure. And that's an echo of the novel. And I think just by the virtue of the form, I felt more connected to these women in the movie than I did in the novel. Which we should say we read for the podcast, but Remy also has read the entire trilogy, so he actually knows even more about it than we do.
I don't know how much that helps with the movie, though.
Yeah, I don't know, and it's tough because we're all seeing this as book readers. As a non-book reader, you might have a different experience. But we're a book reading podcast, so I think this is our perspective. So
yeah. As far as the performances of the cast, I agree. They were all. I felt like I know that the novel was trying to kind of give us that really close first person with the biologist, and it worked for what he was trying to do with the journal entry kind of thing. And with this, Alex Garland was able to connect us to the characters, and each of those characters were well thought out, fleshed out characters. Like, I felt like almost all the characters had an arc. Or had enough to do where it wasn't they weren't just there to get killed by creatures and that kind of thing. There was stakes to each one of their journeys.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, they had. I'm sorry. I was just going to say they have these inner journeys that's really different from like your standard horror. Where people go in and are just there to fill a trope and to get picked off.
Yeah, this movie is so much more than just a horror or even just a sci-fi movie. Like, it's really interesting blend of all that. Like, what's one thing I said to Remy right after we saw it is I thought it was way creepier and even scarier than I expected, for one, and two, in a different way than the book is and can be, because it's a movie and it can be so visceral. Before we move on past general thoughts, I wanted to quote someone I saw on Twitter, and I'm gonna give them by name because I don't want to steal their thought here. But someone named Mark Ash, the real Mark Ash is his handle, but he said that he thought the movie was the cinematic embodiment of the expanding brain meme, which I don't know if you guys have seen that, where it's like it has like 3 stages of the expanding mind pictures, and then it's normally like 3 different things. And I really liked that comparison because, like you were alluding to earlier, James, it's a mind-blowing third act. And so I like the idea of that third act just being your brain like going insane,
Yeah.
If I can add one thing, I know that it's tempting to call this like a horror movie, but I feel like the other it's paired with a sense of awe and wonder, and that's something that I'd like to reflect and explore on more, is just that kind of handoff between the two. At one moment, you're filled with this, whoa, this is really amazing. What's going on here? Where can you take this? And then the next moment you're like, holy shit, you know, like,
Well,
can
yeah.
I swear?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you definitely swear.
Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah, you can swear.
So there were a lot of those moments.
Yeah, and I mean, like, isn't that goes to like the root of the word awesome, right? Like, it's like this like almost terrifying word, right? And that in the truest form, I agree. It's like you're amazed, but you're also terrified by what you're seeing.
Yeah. Totally agree. The body horror is I mean, I was not expecting any of this. I thought it would be creepy, some creatures, that kind of thing, but we got like full on, like, I mean, we can talk about it in spoilers, but it what's funny is that the marketing, I feel like, for this film is kind of, because you were saying there are people even in your theater that you could tell were like, what is going on? And I feel like it's partly due to the marketing, because I've seen a lot of trailers where it seems like this is going to be like an Aliens film. Like, it's going to be like, oh yeah, we're going to shoot some creatures. And like specifically Aliens, James Cameron's Aliens, where it's like we're gonna be going against the creatures, and that's not what this film is, which I think can lead to some either disappointment or just like, I mean, I think it was surprising and fun, and I welcomed it, but I can definitely see why an audience member would be like, oh wow, this isn't what I was promised.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean by fun, but I don't know if I'd use that word for it. It's fun in the way that, like, thinking about a concept and feeling like your brain is expanding and that kind of thing. Like, so I don't want to get into any spoilers, but it's really fascinating movie, and I really enjoyed seeing it. So I guess in that sense it was fun.
Yeah, I guess that's where I'm getting at, is the fun for me was having seen a great film. I had fun having seen the movie and just like reveling in that.
So I wanted to say I thought that this was a really brilliant adaptation of a work that we both loved. And what I like about it is it's an adaptation that doesn't rely heavily on the source material. In fact, I would say like half of it at least is like a completely new thing. But it's still, you know what I mean? Like, it's still so closely tied to the source. It's not a completely different story either. And so I just think from the sense of our podcast, it's interesting to look at an adaptation that is so different yet spiritually so similar. And I think the two works work together in a harmony that's really interesting, that can show why a direct adaptation isn't always the best approach, because I actually think this was the better approach for a film.
If I could riff off of that, I had a couple of thoughts. One is that a lot of the horror and the texture of the book came from the words, right? The writing on in the tower, or whatever you want to call that.
Yeah.
But here you had I was expecting to see those words and they never came up. Instead, you had this visual texture, right? The colors and all the different kind of fractal images, and like the director definitely ran with the full visual power of film to give you that sense of drive, that sense of awe and wonder and terrifying awe home. So I thought that was an interesting contrast to see how the film translated, you know, that feeling very differently than the novel did.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Garland, I think, rightly realizes the strengths of the visual medium versus the written medium, and was able to identify things in the book work, but wouldn't work as well on film. And like you said, was able to transition to something that I think worked even better. So, did you find that, James? You agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. So, Alex Garland with this film, I actually heard something pretty interesting in an interview that he did, where he says that he read the novel one time, and from that one time, he chose to make the film based on what he felt narratively would work for what he wanted to do. And also, you know how when you read something and you kind of it starts to be like a lingering memory, and it seems dreamlike. He wanted to capture that for this film, so he wanted it to be. And in the interview, he says that he spoke with Jeff Vandermeer and kind of got his blessing to do this. And having just read it once, he wanted to approach it and try to remember the things that he could, and if he couldn't remember it, fill in the gaps. Wow. And kind of push it in his own direction. And I mean, I think that's amazing. Like I will say to what you were saying, Luke. I have said on the podcast multiple times that I feel that it's so much easier to make a good film based on existing source material if you stick very closely to that. But easier doesn't necessarily mean better. And I think that in this case, in the right hands, you can take the source material and take that atmosphere that like the Annihilation, the novel was going for, and as long as you know the themes that are trying to be expressed, and the, like we were saying before, the things that push it's pushing your mind in a way that you haven't been challenged before. I just think that he was able to capture that well, and although it's not a direct adaptation, I think it was great.
I came into this as a huge Jeff Vandermeer fan, and I loved Annihilation. I loved the whole Southern Reach trilogy, and so it was a high bar, for the film for me. And one way that I'm kind of reconciling the differences is to think of this as how all the information coming out of the Area X, out of the shimmer, or at least in the novels, all the information coming out of the Area X is warped. You had all the different expeditions going in. I almost want to think of this as one of those expeditions, or somebody's memory of the expedition, that they're trying to relate. And I feel like I can almost put it into a continuity with the novel that way.
Yeah, I want.
That's awesome. I really like that take. That's cool.
I mean, I did want to say, this movie to me resists snap judgments. I really struggled to come up with something quick right after I saw it. Yeah. And it felt like it was a movie that needed to be digested, and that I honestly needed to sit on it for a couple days and just think about it. I had thoughts over the last few days that I kept writing down that were occurring to me long after I'd seen it. And I think that's the way this movie really shines, is that it does just nest in your brain like a fungus, and whisper to you and remind you and play those musical cues that are so striking, and just you keep revisiting it. And I don't know, I feel like I've seen it. I've continued to see it for the days following the movie, even though I only saw it the once.
Are you saying that we're infected by Area X now?
Exactly.
I mean, I believe it, man. I'm starting to think that maybe I want to just become one with nature.
Yeah.
So the last thing I wanted to mention about not in this non-spoiler section is there's a lot being said right now for the way that this film is being distributed. As far as Paramount was the studio that funded this film, and they saw a good up-and-coming director in Alex Garland. And they decided to work with him on a film that he felt passionate about making. So they signed on the dotted line, they greenlit this film, and he made the film. After some test screenings and things came out, Paramount decided that they wanted it to release in the United States, in Canada, and in China at a reduced number of theaters, and then release on Netflix in all other foreign markets. So this is, I mean, it's kind of a hot button thing, because it's for some viewers, they're going to be excited that it's on Netflix and they don't have to pay for it. But what they don't know is that they're missing out on a cinematic experience that a filmmaker went out of, they very specifically made this film to be seen in theaters. Alex Garland said he's been quoted as saying that he made this film to be seen on the big screen, and I just feel that whenever a filmmaker tells you that that's how they want their film to be seen, you should always try to do it in that way.
Yeah, could you imagine seeing 2001 on a laptop for the first time? I mean, right. I'm sure a lot of people do that, but as opposed to seeing it on the big screen.
That's a shame. I wish that we lived in a world where we could get together and say, hey, we want to see this movie on IMAX, so do a showing on IMAX, because that would be the ultimate way, I think, to see this film. It sucks that that's going to happen, but ultimately, enjoy the movie, see it how you can. I think, don't feel like you can't, like, oh, I can't watch it now because I missed it in the theater. No, like, watch it how you can. Turn the volume up, I guess, is the thing. You know what I mean? Like, get some surround sound speakers if you can. Crank the volume. Sit a little closer to the screen. Whatever you got to do. Really immerse yourself in this film and try and simulate it as best you can. I was also talking about this the other night. I'm really glad we live in a world where this movie can get made, and even though it's not going to have that mass appeal, this is not going to, be a blockbuster film. Yet you can have a good budget. You can have an actress like Natalie Portman in it, and you can get a fantastic film that has a niche audience. And I'm glad that we still live in a world where that can happen, and Hollywood, is at least letting that happen in some way. And I wish maybe they leaned into it a little more, but I'm glad we got it.
I agree with you. But the reason that I bring this up is because it worries me that this is studios losing faith in their filmmakers, because we're looking at a situation where Denis Villeneuve directed Arrival, which was an Oscar nominated film, and that's a sci-fi heady cerebral film that audiences responded to. And then we get Blade Runner 2049, which comes out this year, and by the same director. And they didn't pull anything. They did a full release and everything, but it's seen now as a financial flop. And then the same thing here with Alex Garland. Ex Machina is that's not the type of film that gets made because it's going to make a ton of money. That's a film that's made to be seen. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it worries me that we could be in a situation here soon where and they always are, but the studio will want profit much more than they would want any sort of successfully artistic film.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think that's the song as old as, Hollywood at this point. The studio is always going to want to make money. It does suck when there's like a lack of confidence being displayed by an unusual film or for an unusual film. But, I don't know. The time will tell, I guess, the legacy of this film. I mean,
it seems like a bad move to me by Paramount, because you burned a bridge with a filmmaker who's going to go on to make some great stuff. I hope to see his next film on the big screen as we saw this one, and hopefully maybe people in foreign markets are able to see it on a big screen at some point as well. All right, we want to take a second to talk to you about Audible. Audible is an audiobook app that you're able to use to listen to a huge collection of audiobooks. They have basically anything you can think of, and they've been nice enough to give us an affiliate link. The affiliate link is audibletrial.com/ink2film. And with that affiliate link, you're able to get 30 free days to their service and 1 free audiobook in their whole collection.
Yeah, I think that's important to note. That credit equals a book. And what's really cool is right now I'm looking at the list, and you can get 3 books for 1 credit, because they have a collection called the Area X Southern Reach Trilogy that includes Annihilation, Authority, and Acceptance, all 3 books by Jeff Vandermeer in this world. Get those all for 1 free credit, which we will give you if you sign up for it. So if you think about that, pretty good deal.
I probably will use my credit in order to buy all 3 so that I can read the other 2.
Yeah, man, I am so excited to get to those other books. I've heard really interesting things. I've heard that they're written in different styles, which is really fascinating to me. So I'm excited to get to them, absolutely. And if not only that, there's also the Bourne, it's called Bourne novel by Jeff Vandermeer. I haven't read it, but I think it's one of his new ones. He has a few in that world too. And if it's anything like Annihilation, then sign me up. So yeah, right now you can use our link. It's audibletrial.com/ink2film. You get that free credit and get 3 books.
Are you guys ready to go into spoilers and really, really go down this rabbit hole?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, so I think the first thing we should address is some of the changes. The characters they have full names instead of just their titles. So Natalie Portman is Lena. She and Oscar Isaac's Kane are the husband and wife, biologist and husband. And then there's an additional person that goes on this mission with them into Area X, or into the shimmer, as they call it in the film. Off the bat, like, what do you think about some of these changes, and not just the name change? What are some changes that stood out to you?
I mean, obviously as someone who read the next 2, the full trilogy, the ending is very, very different. and from what I understand, Garland didn't even. I don't think Authority and Acceptance were even out yet when he basically came up with the script for Annihilation.
Wow.
And he didn't. I think he chose not to even read those.
Mm-hmm.
So the ending is definitely a huge difference in how everything is kind of wrapped up in a way that's very different from the novels.
So I guess right here, while we're at this point, if you guys want to go ahead and say how you felt about it, because it sounds, I think from what I gather, we all liked it, but I would love to hear your thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, I think the main thing is I came away from reading the Southern Reach trilogy with a lot of questions unanswered, but in a way that, in that pleasant way that that keeps you thinking and wondering, and where this, I felt like a lot of things were wrapped up a little too neatly for me at the end. I'm still, like Luke said, I'm still thinking about that. But that was the one thing at the theater that I felt I kind of wanted to have some more questions. I wanted the shimmer to continue.
Yeah,
yes.
I see what you're saying. I mean, and I think it kind of does. I mean, we're in full spoilers here for the very end, but and I was, we can talk about it now. But we see the shimmer kind of in their eyes at the end, and so I think that was his kind of "It Lives" ending, like a little bit of that. It does carry on, but I also felt like it was a decision that he made to try and wrap this film up. Maybe with the knowledge that there was going to be future books, but he wanted this movie to stand alone. So he wanted to give some sort of closure to an audience that I think rightfully he was going to feel like is on the ropes, going, "What the fuck did I just see?" And it still was, because we see the two characters at the end with it in their eyes, and what does that even mean? Which we can talk about now, or we can talk about later, but.
So I agree. As the shimmer was coming down, I felt like there was a change that I kind of wished. Like, I kind of liked the ambiguity. I would have loved to have had a little bit more ambiguity. But I mean, all in all, I was really happy with it, and I think that having them, I mean, after the mindfuck that was that third act, and then seeing all the weirdness that went on, having them walk away and kind of being assimilated or whatever that was supposed to represent, that's kind of what it represented to me. I felt like I understood it. I didn't feel like it was quite as strong of an ending as the novel had, because it was just a powerful, there was no bookend. It was just continuing on, and I like that idea. But I think at the end of the day, I did enjoy it, and I liked it. Since we've jumped this far ahead, I think we should just jump into the into that thing that you were talking about a second ago, Luke.
So I was going to ask you to, so when we see that the copy of Oscar Isaac's Kane character has been healed by the shimmer coming down, and that she is with him, and they embrace at the end, and they both have the shimmer sort of in their eyes. What does that mean to you? Like, what is, because in the movie, I think it leans heavily on the idea that this is an alien, and maybe not clearly stating that it is, but it felt strongly implied to me that this is an alien being of some, or an alien force of some kind. And how is it that the alien is destroyed yet persists in these two characters? Maybe, or is that even what you read from that scene?
Well, I mean, so we actually talked about this in our last episode, Luke, where we were talking about perception and the idea that the camera, for the most part, the camera can't hide anything from the audience. Right. And I felt like with the final scene, with all the things, they were like mirroring each other, and like there was like a sort of like assimilation moment or something. Like, I feel like that was the way that Alex Garland was trying to say, we're not supposed to know which. I still think that it was the alien or the beings that held onto that flash grenade at the end, that phosphorus. But yeah. I think that it's supposed to either say she's been fully assimilated, or it was it carrying on in some way. Like, I just think that we were supposed to be confused about all of what was happening with that all going on. She was knocked out a few times, and like, I just think that it was his way of making it so that we had some sort of unreliable narrator through the camera.
And I felt like it almost it was showing that it really didn't matter whether you were a copy, born from a drop of blood, the way that I'm assuming that that's how Kane's copy was made, was the same way that Lena's was. Like, it doesn't matter if you're that or if you've just been transformed slowly internally, by the forces, the genetic refractions in the shimmer. Like, it's all ultimately, you're being transformed. That's kind of what I got out of that last moment, looking at their eyes.
So it was more that she had been transformed than she was like a host for the alien in some way.
That's kind of what I felt.
Okay.
I mean, because the whole thing was about all of these transformations, right? Like we saw that, especially that one scene. Oh my goodness, the cutting open that one guy's from the previous expedition, his belly,
stomach,
and seeing all the intestines moving around.
Man, that was a great body horror moment for this film that I was not expecting, and man, that hit me because I don't know, just the image of them kind of like shifting and moving like tentacles or snakes or something in there, deeply unsettling. And I loved Oscar Isaac's, like, doesn't get a lot to do in this movie, but his eyes in that little video
moment.
like, he looks so insane, like it's so good.
Like, he looked almost happy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he was like, hey, check this out.
Yeah.
Whoa. Instead of being like, I'm going to throw up now, he looked fascinated.
And they transitioned that scene directly into them finding the empty pool with the thing on the wall, the what was left on the wall, and the knife, when she finds the knife in the water, and it's like clear that this was that guy. Like, those two back to back, man. Like, this is before we even get to that crazy third act, but right there, I was just like, holy shit. Like, that was some brilliant stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that was amazing. When his intestines were squirming all around, I was like, oh God, this is like crazy body horror. And then, I love that the characters are affected in the same way that we are, because that's later like the motivation for that character who captures them, and she's like, "Are my insides doing that right now?" Like, it has haunted her, you know. I mean, I would be torn up too. Talking about this fluidity and stuff, I thought that was so cool. And I that's definitely a change from the novel, right? That there wasn't this idea that their skin was flowing and like So
yeah, it's interesting because it's like, it's not necessarily not true in the novel, but it's not as true. Like highlighted, I guess, like, because there's a lot of unknowns in the novel too. But I like the idea of it. It feels like it could have been true. Like, maybe the shimmer worked in this kind of way. But it also kind of feels like maybe that was just Alex Garland's take on what was happening in the novel.
I love that motif that they had going on though with it happened very early on, but the glass of water where their hands were like Oscar Isaac and Natalie Portman's characters' hands were met in the middle of this glass of water, and it showed like they were moving back and forth, and you saw through the glass like the fluidity and how it was like changing, and they were one and not, and then the blood dropping into the water from. I mean, I thought that was so cool, and then throughout they're talking about their hands and their fingerprints are in motion, and I mean, just the idea that this is how, I thought that was so cool, and visually he was able to express it so well. I mean, gosh, that was so much fun.
One thing that kept coming to mind was cancer and mutation, right? Yeah. Mutation can mean death in a horrible way, or it can also mean,
evolution.
You change from like a ground hugging lizard into a something that soars through the air, and you're seeing that on fast forward in the movie, both directions, right? Like the horror and also the wonder.
Yeah, that leads me right into something else I wanted to say. That mutation, the idea that this being, okay, let me back up. So if you do a lot of research or listen to a lot of podcasts or whatever it is we way to do it about aliens, you'll start to encounter the idea that our perception of what aliens could be is very based off of our perception of our own consciousness and our own, MOs in life. And we often project that onto an alien being. What I love about this movie and book so much is it's one of the best examples of a alien consciousness that is unknowable, that is so removed from human motivation that you can't figure out what it wants. And at the end of the movie, she says, I don't know. Maybe it didn't want anything. And I love that too, because it's like all of this terribleness, all of this murder and insanity, it's all almost a side effect of its presence. It's not like it's doing this out of some malicious thing. It's just here and it's creating and it's changing. But because of the way nature works, those transformations are often bloody and violent. But it's not like it's doing that out of some sort of malicious intent,
Right. I was going to say something similar to this. The idea that we see these creatures and they seem hideous to us because they're just altered, and we see it, that we perceive this as like evil. And yet it is just survival, right? At its basic level, whatever this biological occurrence is, or whatever these aliens are, these creatures, they're doing what they, at their base instinct, is just surviving. And so it's to think of the whole thing, all of the goings on within, as kind of just being a survival, whether like we don't see it from their perspective until late into the film, I think. And I think that's amazing.
I just wanted to say that skull-faced boar bear with human voice is pretty close to evil.
No, but even that I felt like it was accidental. Like she even says, and I love the explanation the film gave, that Joan, I think was the character, was dying, and as she died, because of this refraction, everything's changing and picking up other traits. It borrows the trait of her like death rattle and death call.
Yeah.
And then it was giving, like, God, that scene was so good and terrifying, and man, I loved it. And yeah, to have it, and I think this is the creature in the book that's like the moaning creature in the swamp. Mm-hmm. But it just is, it's more present and more thrilling encounter. But yeah, it's like that, the thing opening its mouth and letting out this terrifying death rattle. I mean, that was so cool. And then the way that she thought that was Joan outside and ran out there.
Yes.
It's so good.
Dude, horrifying. I mean, it was so scary. Like I genuinely was like, this has to stop because this is way too unnerving for me right now.
And it was just done so perfectly, because you could kind of sense her voice in it, but it wasn't over the top. It was still bestial, you know? It's like
it was like the suggestion of the voice.
Yeah.
I agree. And so just revisiting that, it also reminds me that in the moment at the end of the movie, which is flash forward in the beginning, it's because it's kind of nonlinear. I got the strong sense that Lena, is it Lena or is Lena, right?
Lena.
Yeah. That Lena regretted or had some regret about how everything went down at the lighthouse. Because she even says, at some point she says, I attacked it, if anything. And I think that was a revelation that she felt like she was terrified in the moment and didn't understand, and defensively lashed out and ultimately killed this thing that, like I said, like I feel like a lot of the terrible things it was doing was accidental, to me at least. That's my reading of it.
Yeah, like it just, she saw it as a threat or as evil, so she did what she thought was right, which would be to survive. Whereas that's probably the exact same thing the other creature was trying to do. The other thing I want to talk about in this scene is, I mean, the visuals are unbelievable. Coming into this scene and the psychedelic nature of it, and the almost like
kaleidoscope.
Yes, kaleidoscope effect that was going on in this portal of some kind, and the drop of blood, and I mean.
Well, and the Slender Man version of the blank-faced alien and the sound cue. Like, this movie tells you what's happening on screen through sound, almost more than anything, because there's no dialogue for much of that third act. but that it's like synth, like dubstep sound, but it's just like it's like out of tune and discordant every time it moves, you get this new tone, and I found that so affecting. I mean, what was your read on that whole scene, that third act scene, Remy?
Oh, geez. I'm still trying to parse through all of that. Yeah. I'm gonna hold off for the moment, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Do you want to give it a shot, James?
You're asking what I thought about what I make of the scene in general?
Yeah, with that third act where she's kind of interacting with the Slender Man version of the alien.
I mean,
what is
your
takeaways from that scene?
The obvious takeaway is that it's a complete departure and a complete, like, it's you know, it's in a totally different direction. So with that being said, and knowing that, I feel like it was like I was saying before, I really liked the techniques that were being employed, because he was using the camera to tell a story that we weren't supposed to necessarily be able to 100% walk away having comprehended. So he was like, he wanted to make it as confusing as possible while also having answers in there. I also wanted to say there were a couple reveals within the scene, like when Kane, Oscar Isaac's character, he's recording himself and you think he's alone, and then the other Kane walks into frame after he's burned himself up. Great reveal. Did not see that coming. I thought that was great. Something specific I wanted to mention about this film is framing that he uses in blocking and lighting. So throughout the film, the lighting is almost through the shimmer. All the lighting that's coming through is like multicolored, like very dreamlike. And the framing, I think, from what I saw a few times, he's trying to unnerve the audience and make them feel like something's off the whole time. Because normally if somebody's looking a certain direction, you want to give them space in the frame to where they can, there's a certain amount of empty space in the direction that they're looking. But there were a few times that he would put the character at the edge of frame looking into something we couldn't see, and the open space is behind them. And just employing certain things like that, and using, as you were saying before, the score to tell the story, I just thought was like, he's doing so many things subliminally and subtly to just put you on edge.
If I can talk a little bit about that scene too, I keep coming back to it, like I said, and revisiting it in my mind. And to me, if you accept my idea that this alien is essentially, whether it is itself a being of change or it is somehow enacting change, it feels like it's, the shimmer and it are forces that activate like an extremely accelerated evolution, like Remy was saying. And why it does that, I don't know. And I don't know if maybe it even can control it. Maybe it just does it naturally. That's just how it is. But when she comes face to face with it, I got a definite sense of curiosity out of the alien, like it was trying to understand her. And I thought that was a nice echo of the book, where when she encounters the crawler, she has the revelation where she feels like it now understands the story of her, and the words that she is could be written on the wall. And I felt like that's what this alien was doing in this third act, because it mirrors her. And I thought in a really crazy way, because it's not looking at her or anything, it doesn't even have eyes, but it mirrors her body and movements, right? And really unsettling, but also almost in a way that you would do if you were trying to understand something, maybe? I don't know.
I just realized, I think one of the reasons why it's hard for me to articulate that, my feelings about that last act, and I think it's because I don't see the alien as, I don't see that encounter with this humanoid, the Slender Man version, as the encounter with the alien. They've been encountering the alien from the moment she started talking to Kane when he showed up at her front door, or not even at her front door, inside the house.
Right.
And from the moment they were entering the shimmer, I feel like that whole thing was the alien, that the alien was entering them and transforming them, and now they're part of the alien. what what you were saying, James, earlier about I want to be one with nature. I was like, well, they're all kind of one with the alien, and the alien is one with the nature in the shimmer. Everything's all kind of blended together. And so I think of the alien in this not as like those forms that you see at the end are like fingers or like some extension of what the true alien is, and maybe the heart of the alien is in that light, but not in those bodies. The bodies are just part of the attempt to kind of interact. That's kind of what I got out of that.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I guess it's how much of do we think that the extension of self is still like a part of, like, like our hand is still us. And so if the copy is it that closely tied, or is it like a separate thing now that's split off? I don't know, and I don't know that we can know from the movie, And maybe the entire shimmer and everything within it is all the alien, or is the shimmer and everything within it some sort of aura being cast from a central point, and that central point of light or energy is actually the alien. I don't know. And I think it's also really interesting that the psychologist in this film, who is pretty different but similar to the psychologist in the book, when we meet her in that third act, and she's down in the hole. When we first see her, I don't know if you guys caught this, but like she has no eyes.
Yeah.
At first. Mm-hmm. Which I thought like she's blinded or something, and I thought that was a really cool symbolic way, because often the symbolism of someone having no eyes can maybe mean that they have found a different form of sight. And so I like to think that she has been spending time down there and has connected with this thing in a way. And then I wanted to get your takes on it, and I have a thought, but I don't know if I even like it. But why does she sort of evaporate and become this tunnel and everything? Like, it's the psychologist that actually kind of explodes into the alien that we encounter, right? And why does that happen? Why isn't she just made as a copy, I guess? And I have a theory, but I'd like to get your takes.
I wanted to say that I feel like one way that you can analyze this film is to just look at all the deaths. Mm-hmm. And every death is most of the deaths are very different from each other, right?
Right.
And I don't have an answer to that, but I think it's, you've got people transforming into someone who makes peace inside of themselves. Is it Josie? She makes peace with it, right? And then kind of walks in, and I think she's transformed into one of those flower sculptures.
Yeah, she embraces that.
I really like that scene.
Yeah, that was really good.
Talk about unsettling, though. Seeing those sprouts coming out of her veins.
Oh yeah,
ooh, gives me shivers.
Yeah, so that might be. I'm kind of. That's one way that I'm attempting to grapple with the film, is to think about each of the characters, think about what they were struggling with, think about how they died, because their deaths are so different, and so I'm kind of curious to see what people say, what you all say about the psychologist and her transformation, her death.
Yeah, I really like that, because I feel like each death, like you're saying, is very different, and also very specific to the person that like to what their story was or what their life was like. And I think that as far as me, this is just full on brainstorm session, but I feel like with the psychologist, when she kind of embraced that, I feel like it had something to do with the fact that she was so close to death, because she knew she had already accepted death. Basically, she had gone in knowing that she was going to see this lighthouse and die. Basically, like that was like her goal, and having completed that and having finished what she wanted to finish, maybe the alien or creature or whatever it is responds to this in some way, and I don't know what to draw from that, but I feel like it had something to do with her closeness to death.
So yeah, I like the idea that she's really close to death, and that's what I kept thinking about her having cancer. And I was wondering if maybe her body having cancer could explain why she was essentially destroyed instead of, if that's even what happened to her, instead of being copied. Like she was like, you know what I mean? Like an imperfect specimen to copy because she already had this growth inside of her, which we don't know how far along. It could have been all throughout her body for all we know.
Right.
It's also the one time in the film, I think, that we hear the word annihilation.
Yeah,
because I was waiting for that the whole film. I was like, when are we going to hear the word?
And it is interesting that the psychologist also says annihilation the first time we hear it in the book, in a very different situation, but she does.
Yeah.
Now, I also thought the character of the psychologist was being combined with the lighthouse keeper, because she also kind of became the embodiment of the crawler and the caretaker kind of thing. Like she had this relationship with the thing at the end. And so I liked the kind of the economy there. Rather than introducing this other character that we don't know, the lighthouse keeper, he was able to take that role and give it to the psychologist.
Yeah, I like that.
I had a question to throw out. And
yeah.
How is this different from having an all-female expedition as opposed to, I mean, we see a little bit of contrast with the all-male expedition. And one thing I kind of did like about this movie is that the men are largely off stage, right? Like they do provide context and motivation and depth to the film, but it really is focused on these women. But I'm kind of curious because, how this would have been different if it was an all-male expedition, and what value was gained, by having it all-female.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I'm going to get into some fairly crass gender generalizations here, but I think this movie is handling it in a subtle way, and I'm not going to be subtle, but I think men often are more aggressive and often maybe less. I don't know. Something could be said about women and maybe like childbearing and maybe women's comfort with things that men might find more off-putting with their own bodies. And so if you have an all-woman group, maybe they're going to be more open to and maybe resistant to even like going insane because of change. Whereas men are maybe more rigid and not used to having those kind of changes. And then also, we see like the violence inherent in the male expedition when we watch some of these videos. And I think the idea that men would want to attack, I think, is a pretty safe assumption, that often men are going to view something as a foe that needs to be conquered, and maybe women would be different in that regard. I don't know if that's what he was going for, but I guess that's my own thoughts about it.
And maybe that's a comparison point, too, between this and Arrival, where you have women engaging, right, rather than attacking. Yeah, I can imagine an all-male cast. And not only that, but the expectations of the audience, if they were watching an all-male military group moving in, that they would maybe expect it to be more of a kind of testosterone-filled, action film or something.
Yeah.
I mean,
and instead of the cerebral one that we got.
Yeah, as far as generalizations go, like you said, I think that the tendency would be to be more aggressive or more, like you're saying, resistant or violent towards beings or anything else that would potentially be coming their way, like issues. And even within the group, there may be more like headbutting going on. And whereas with the female group, they would be more like patient or able to articulate or like analyze and come from it from a perspective of, I guess, just exploration.
Okay. Does that help you at all, Remy?
I feel like I didn't have a great answer for that one. Sorry.
I didn't have a great answer either. That's one reason I wanted to ask the question.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to point out before I forget is remember in our book episode, James, I complimented, because I started realizing he was doing this. He would often lead into an important scene by giving us a flashback first, and then he would transition from that flashback and have it inform the scene that followed. And I thought that was a cool device he was using. I noticed that this movie does the same thing. Did you catch that?
Yeah, I saw a bit of that. Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about it earlier in the episode with the knife flashback in the video thing, and not even just that, but back into before she was in the dome.
Yeah, specifically, we actually got like title cards of different like sections, like it was like the tower and the shimmer and I think the lighthouse or something, like it was like the movie was segmented in that way, right?
Right.
And every time we got one of those cards, I believe every time that happened, it immediately followed that with a flashback that then led into the thing kind of being described. So it was like the lighthouse, and then we got a flashback to the final day where the husband left and they had the argument about her cheating and all of that. And then it went into the actual scene. And so it was interesting that he used, it just seemed to me like Alex Garland identified that device, liked it, and decided to put it into his film. And I just think that's cool.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Something else that I realized that he was doing was in the way that I felt like the book gave you time to breathe and to experience Area X. I feel like Garland also did a great job of allowing us to sit with things that have happened and just be in awe of. One that really sticks out to me was when Lena first gets to the beach area that's close to the lighthouse, and she drops her equipment and starts walking to the lighthouse, and we just get this shot of the beach with these like crystallized trees and like just like those moments stick with me a lot because it's contemplative time. It's time to think about the things that we've seen, and I just think that it was.
And the skulls and the rib cages laid out in front of it was so ominous and inexplicable. Why would this ever happen? And I think it really shows, like I talked earlier about this kind of the idea of the unknowable, and that's very big in the book too, right? And how when faced with the unknowable, like a reaction is to go insane. And I think that's also really clearly illustrated in the video because Kane, I got a strong sense that when he killed himself, he didn't know who he was, if he was even, like, I think he even says, like, I might be Kane, I might be someone else, I don't know. Like, he was so far gone, he didn't even know who he was, what was happening. He's sitting there talking to a copy of himself. So I can understand how it would be so, like, such a mindfuck. And that was put on screen so well, like that insanity, and like I loved seeing that.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I'll never. What's burned into my mind more than a lot of the images is just his expression when after he's cut open the belly of his mate, like. Whoa.
Yeah, it was like he had proved something, right? And I think that's what it was. He was like he had proved something that he desperately needed to show. And he was happy in that moment.
Yeah.
And that's so cool. Yeah, I agree. And creepy.
I feel like so much of what made this movie memorable and powerful were all of those tensions, right? That you had the moment on the beach, you had the crystal trees, but then you had the skeleton garden, Yeah. You had these beautiful flowers, but they're in the shape of a human, or this wondrous growth on the pool wall that used to be a person,
Right.
Like those tensions between the beauty and the horror, like kind of mixed together.
Yeah, I just want to shout out the production design because that blooming, like after they cut him open, how he bloomed like that and was just completely separated was so amazing looking. Like, I mean, I'm sure it was augmented with CG and stuff, but it seemed like there was an actual set there that I mean, and it looked amazing. So, and I will also mention that I saw a lot of like practical things going on in this film as far as set design and I mean the gator when we were opening the alligator's mouth, it's cool just to know that there's something there that they're physically acting with.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the last thoughts I have, and then maybe you guys can wrap up with yours. I've been doing a lot of thinking about story structure for my own novel that I'm working on, and there's a lot of hate that can get tossed out about 3-act structure, and because it can be it can be like safe and it can be recognizable. And I loved that this movie fits neatly into 3 acts, because this is a great example of how just because something is structured in a simple way doesn't mean at all that the story is simple. And I love the idea, and it's also the beauty of the 3-act structure where that rising action can lead to a crescendo that can be so powerful. And that's what we get in that 3rd act. And so that makes me feel better about a 3-act structure. And I think there can be a feeling that people always want to reinvent the wheel and think that they need to reinvent story. And I like the idea that a fairly accepted, quote unquote normal structure can lead to a movie like this or to a book like we got.
I mean, I agree. Yeah. As far as a 3-act structure goes, I understand, like you said, why people would want to break that and try something new to see if it would work well. But I feel like it's such a perfect way to bring an audience in, put the characters in situations that they can't overcome, and then have them overcome it or not overcome it. Like it makes a lot of sense to me.
It makes sense to me too. Whenever you want to throw something really weird at someone, I think if you throw too much weirdness at someone, they shut down, right? They're just, I can't take this. But if you give them some way to ground themselves, and maybe in this case, maybe the plot structure, is something that they can latch on to, then you can hold them by the hand and introduce them to all kinds of weirdness, So I think that's I work with weird fiction, and so I think that's something that I want to try to remember, is that I can't just vomit huge amounts of weird on people. I have to give them something tangible, something to hold on to, so that then I can knock them off balance. And I think that both Jeff and Garland have done a great job with that.
Yeah, I like that. I just had another thought that I wanted to call out in the movie itself. The psychologist and Lena have a discussion about self-destruction that I thought was really powerful moment, where she has identified that something in their relationship was self-destructive, and maybe she doesn't even know. I mean, when I say she, I'm sorry, the psychologist. And she even kind of calls Lena out on it, like, you would understand better than me. And then we get the flashback to the cheating, right? And we understand that this was a sort of inexplicable self-destructive moment. And I like the idea because it expands out to all of us. And she even says destabilizing the safe job. And we can all appreciate the idea of, sabotaging a safe relationship, abusing alcohol and drugs, things like that. Self-destruction is a big part of human existence. And why is that a thing? Like, it almost defies reason that we would do this. Like, why would we ever do this? And I don't know. I don't know that I have a good answer for that, but I think that theme is tied up in the movie somehow. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so prominent.
Yeah, I think he's trying to make a comment. Not that this is the answer, but this is kind of my takeaway. Like, he's trying to make the comment that it's a natural, like, not just natural, but like it's a nature thing. Like, it's something that happens in nature, that whether it's humans or whatever else it is there is this self-destructive and redemptive thing within all of us.
It's like programmed into our cells even.
Yeah, and honestly, maybe it's the thing that makes us different, because I mean, I don't know, like the creatures, those deer they saw in the, she sees in the field, or I call them deer, but whatever they were, deer-like creatures, like they seem almost at peace, whereas the humans are struggling so much, right? And there's so much like death and grief and sadness and insanity, and maybe it's our consciousness and our struggles with the existential that drives us to self-destruct. And when faced with this setting, those drives are what's creating, like, that's almost the antagonist of the movie, is that drive in us getting thrown out of whack by whatever this alien is. I don't know. That's, I'm just spitballing here, but what do you guys think of that?
I like it, man. It sounds right to me.
Cool. So how about I think we're going good on time here. So how about we go ahead and wrap up and have our final thoughts about this movie, and we can kind of go around and do that. I think I've said enough for now. So do you want to start out, James?
Sure. So, I mean, lastly, something that I definitely want to say is the performances. Natalie Portman is great as usual. Jennifer Jason Leigh, it's always great to see her in a film. She was extremely unsettling throughout the whole film. The way that she had talked to people, just that on its own, like the dictation was
That was the psychologist, I'm assuming?
yes. Dr. Ventress. She was like really off-putting the whole time. And I thought she might have been an alien from the start, or not, like infected from the start. Tessa Thompson, like between Creed, Thor Ragnarok, and this, Tessa Thompson's becoming one of my favorite actors.
Yeah, she was great.
Oscar Isaac, amazing as usual, and Gina Rodriguez. I wanted to say she was fantastic in this movie. Like as like confused as her character was, and how like on edge she was, she went from being like the playful, fun character to being the most on like to turning on the entire expedition, and like her role was amazing. And then her name is Tuva Novotny, was Cass, and I thought she did a great job as well. I haven't seen her in anything else up to this point, but when she went down, and then also when we heard her voice in that bear creature, like I really felt for her character. And I mean, all in all, I think that, like I said before, I would recommend this to hardcore sci-fi fans and anybody who's looking for something weird and new and unique, because I do think that this film is unique, as was the novel.
All right, Remy, how about you?
Actually, yeah, you said a lot of what I wanted to say. I wanted to call out. I mean, you have this cerebral, intense, science fiction horror movie, all female cast with strong POC characters as well. I wanted to highlight in particular Tessa Thompson's performance. It's just the contrast between her and Gina Rodriguez's performances. That was actually one of the most terrifying moments. Well, the most peaceful and the wonder-filled, and most with Tessa Thompson's transformation, and Gina's character. What was Anya?
Anya,
was her, when Anya turned on the expedition, was just as frightening as a lot of the more terrifying alien moments in the film. What this movie makes me want to do is to see it again and again, because I feel like I'll get something new out of it, and it'll churn my brain more. It also makes me want to go back and read the books again. So I feel like this is a sign of great art, So definitely I would encourage everyone. Hopefully people have made it through the spoilers, have seen the movie, go see the movie again. If you haven't read the books, go read the books. I think it'll enrich the full experience.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I think, at this point, if you're here, you've probably seen the movie. But yeah, if you check out the books if you want more, but also slightly different look at this. You know what I mean? Like it's not the same, but I am so excited and interested in reading the second and third novel in this trilogy. I'm going to do that for sure soon. I've been thinking about this movie, and it feels like kind of the, like, if you think of like Arrival as the yin, this is the yang of that alien encounter story, right? They're both like of a kind, because they're so cerebral and they're so kind of mind-blowing each in their own way. But this is the dark version of that. This is the version of something unknowable and inexplicable that doesn't go well for us, maybe because of who we are. But it's interesting because that has some of its DNA in Arrival as well. Like these movies are interesting because they're by different directors, and by different writers' source material. But I do feel like they cover thematically there's some interesting overlap, I guess. And I find that really fascinating. And yeah, I look forward to reading the next books by Jeff Vandermeer, because I was a huge fan of Annihilation. I know James was too.
Definitely.
All right, so I guess we'll leave it there. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you for joining us, Remy.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh God, yeah! Thank you for having me aboard. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Anytime. I hope you come back for a future project, maybe down the road. We could use your takes again.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to join.
So if people wanted to find you online and maybe connect and follow some of your weird fiction, how can they do that, and where can they find you?
So I'm on. My name is Remy Nakamura, and so my handle is Remy Mura, REMYMURA, and that's the handle that I use on both Instagram, on Twitter, and I'm also at mindonfire.com.
That's a great domain. That's cool that you got that, man.
Yeah, no, that was I've had it for probably about 18, 19 years now.
Wow,
so.
Nice get.
Yeah, thanks again for having me.
Of course, yeah, it was so much fun. Thank you for coming on.
All right, that was our conversation with Remy. I wanted to thank him one last time for coming on. He can be found online at www.mindonfire.com. Or you can follow him on Instagram, where he is at Remy Mura, REMYMURA.
Yeah, thanks so much again for coming on. It was a lot of fun. Also, if you wanted to find Ink to Film on social media, we are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all of those at Ink to Film, and we're pretty active on there, so if you wanted to send anything our way, we'll see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you would like to send us feedback directly, like if you want to ask us a question about our upcoming project, A Wrinkle in Time, which we should announce, send that to inktofilm@gmail.com. And we can respond to any questions or any feedback you might have, and maybe we'll bring it up on the show.
And also, if you wanted to help out the show, the best way you can do that is to subscribe. It really helps us out, and it helps you get your episodes day one in your feed.
Yeah, or follow us on Spotify.
Yeah, follow us on Spotify. We're on Spotify, Google Play, wherever you get your podcast. Leave reviews, subscribe.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing you can do to help us on social media is share our episodes around. Do a post, like share our posts. However you want to do it, that would be a great help. You kind of spread, like we said in the last episode, we want to grow, so you can help us out. Oh, and that reminds me, I have a short story that is coming out tomorrow. If you are listening to this on day one, that's Friday, March 2nd. It'll be coming out. And yeah, it's like a weird fantasy story. So if you like this kind of thing, you should check it out. It's called Always Dawn to Forever Night. And you can find that on metaphorosis.com, or I think it might be metaphorosis.magazine.com. I think either one you can find it, actually. It's an online magazine where you can read it for free, so you don't have to pay anything. You check it out. Then, reach out to me on social media and let me know what you think. I'm excited about it.
Cool, man. I'm looking forward to it. Can't wait to read it. So lastly, we just want to say thank you to Ross Bugden for the use of our intro and outro music.
Which is killer this week, by the way. I really like it.
Yeah, I'm a fan of this one. It's got that dark, I don't know, it's just
Last of Us vibe.
Yes. So yeah, thank you to Ross Bugden for that. And also thank you to Audible for our affiliate link. That is audibletrial.com/ink2film. And you get 30 free days and 1 free credit. So sign up. And lastly, thank you to Remy for coming on. It was a lot of fun and we appreciate it. We hope to have you on again soon.
Absolutely, and we hope you join us next week for our A Wrinkle in Time novel episode. Looking forward to that. Until then, I'm Luke.
And I'm James.
See ya.